Once you have an object in Illustrator and you select it, it allows you to make transformations to it straight away, thanks to this thing called the bounding box. Now, you have to make sure under the view menu you have it turned on. You will find it here in the middle, and if it says hide bounding box, that means it's already visible. So coming back here, I can show you that each of these corner points can be selected to change the size of this shape. So I can very quickly resize it and make amends to it, as you can see. What you can also do is to hold down the Shift key to keep the proportions. That's a way to constrain the proportions. And going further away from a corner point, you can also start rotating the shape. If you hold down Shift while rotating, it will keep the rotation 45 degrees increments. So you can very quickly turn it upside down or to its side, and so on and so forth. You can of course also drag side points to make changes to the size of the object. And in a Creative Cloud version, you will have these little corner widgets with which you can drag them closer to the center to add corner radius on the object. So you can make all the corners rounded or turn them back again into sharp corners. Now remember, if you use the white arrow tool and select a specific individual corner, you can also just use the corner radius there instead of using it on all the other corners. These are called corner widgets, and once again, you can make sure that they are visible by going to the view menu. Here you will find the corner widget option. Don't forget, it's only available in Creative Cloud. Unfortunately, in previous versions, to edit corners was a little bit more difficult, not as convenient as with the corner widgets. For rotation, there's also another technique. You can switch to the rotation tool or rotate tool, and with this you can also decide where you want this object to turn around. So instead of its center point, you can specify a point even outside of the shape, and when you're dragging the object, it will move around that center point. So whenever you want to reposition that center point, just drag it over another area, and then it will rotate the object around that point. There is a panel which is very useful whenever you make transformations to object. It's called Transform panel, surprisingly. And in Creative Cloud, there's a lot of additional options here again, like the angle of the object is actually saved, and I can always reset it back to the default value. I can also see the corner radius here. Again, I can always set that back to 0 millimeters. So very quickly goes back to the default rectangle without any rotation on it. But apart from all these settings, there's a very important option here called Scale Strokes and Effects. Now, we only have a stroke at the moment, but this option is turned off. By default, this might be turned on in your computer. Most likely it will be on. And let me show you what that means. When that option is off and you make changes to an object, the scale or the size of the stroke will always be the same, no matter how big the object. So obviously when the object is small, the stroke looks much bigger because it just remembers that it needs to be 5-point size. When I make the object bigger, still the stroke is going to maintain 5-point as the stroke size. So let's just make it smaller around that size and turn on the scale strokes and effects here in the transform panel. Now if I make it bigger, notice what will happen, that the stroke size will keep the size in relation to the object, and it will increase it accordingly. So now the stroke size is around 20 points. Same way I increase it up, if I make it smaller again, it will also go down in size. So the stroke width is going to follow the changes to the size of the object. And same applies to scaling corners. So let's just make this corner all around this shape a little bit more rounded, something like that. I will set the stroke size to 10, and I will turn on scale corners as well. So now if I change the size of this object, the corners will also scale down or scale up. So you can see they get much bigger. Currently it's 15 points, each of the radius on the corners. When I make it smaller, it goes down also to 3 points. If you turn off scale corners, then they will remain the same size no matter how big the object. The way I like to work is most of the time to turn off the scale strokes and effects and also turn off scale corners. Only if I wish to scale them up and down, that's when I turn them on. But by default, I usually have them turned off. It really depends on the actual work you are doing, whichever option is better. So it's very important to remember that you can change these under the transform panel. Now, if you can't see these options at the bottom, you might need to click on the panel menu and choose show options. But by the way, from this drop down, you can also find the scale strokes and effects feature. So you can even turn it on here. And apart from all the options that we went through, of course, you can also change the size of the object here. So you have the W and H values, plus you also have the coordinates where this object is currently in the document. Now, that's another important feature, especially together with the reference points of the object. Currently, it's set to the center point, but let's just change the reference point to the top left corner. Once I choose that, I can actually see the X and Y coordinate values of that. So if I change these to 0, both of them, then the object is going to be placed where the original 0 point of this artboard was. To see exactly how that works, you should turn on another option, which I prefer to keep on all the time. It's called rulers. This is under the view menu, rulers, show rulers, but Command or Control R is the shortcut for it. And once that's turned on, you will see a horizontal and vertical ruler on the document window, which will always show you exactly where the 0 point is. Now, if you want, you can click here in the intersection of these two rulers and drag it over where you wish to use the 0 point. So if the top left corner you want to set for 0 point, you can just drag it there. And then once again, if I have this object selected and I come to the transform panel, I can always set it up accordingly. So I can choose X, 0, and now it's going to be set exactly to the top left corner of the artboard. I will talk more about rulers and guides later, and also how to work very precisely in Illustrator whenever you need to. But for now, just remember the transform panel and these few features that we went through making these basic transformations. In the next video, we will have a look at how to combine shapes by using two different methods, and we will also learn what is a compound path.